If you are a working class person, you will live 7 years shorter lives than if you're in the top 1%. If you're a working class person, your life will be 7 years shorter than if you are wealthy. In other words, being poor or working class in America today amounts to a death sentence.
In this video, Senator Bernie Sanders speaks in front of Congress in an address that he frames to President Trump and tells a lot of painful but honest truths. Let's watch this together. I will have some thoughts, and then I want to know what you think in the comments, but let's check it out.
There are many people who are working today who are living in the back of their cars. How do I pay for childcare? Talked to a guy the other day, a police officer, spending $20,000 a year for childcare. How do I buy decent food for my kids when the price of groceries is off the charts? What happens if I get sick or my kid gets sick or my mother gets sick and I got a $12,000 deductible and I can't afford to go to the doctor? How at the end of the month am I going to pay my credit card bill even though I am being charged 20 or 30% interest rates by the usurious credit card companies? People are worrying about simple things. What happens if my car breaks down and the guy at the repair shop says it's going to cost $1,000 and I don't have $1,000 in the bank? And if I don't have a car, how do I get to work? And if I don't get to work, how do I have an income? And if I don't have an income, how do I take care of my family? Those are the crises that millions of Americans are experiencing today. But it's not just working age Americans. Today in our country, half of older workers have nothing in the bank as they face retirement. And they're watching TV and they're saying, Mr. Musk firing Social Security workers and actually worrying whether Social Security will be there for them. And it's not just older workers with nothing in the bank wondering what happens when they retire. 22% of seniors are trying to survive on $15,000 a year. I dare anybody in this country, let alone somebody who's old, who needs health care, needs to keep the house warm, try to survive on $15,000 a year. And there are people here, by the way, talking about cutting Social Security. Mr. President, it is not just about income and wealth inequality. It is about a health care system which everyone in the nation understands is broken, is dysfunctional, and is outrageously expensive. I hear my Republican friends, I don't know where they are today, wanting to destroy the ACA. And my Democratic friends say, we got to defend the ACA. ACA is broken. It doesn't work. In my state, the cost of health care is going up 10, 15%. In America today, you got 85 million people uninsured or underinsured. Function of the health care system today is not to do what a sane society would do, guarantee health care to all people in a cost-effective way. Something which, by the way, every other major nation on earth manages to do. The function of our health care system, as everybody knows, is to make billions of dollars in profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies. So I say to my Democratic friends, it's not good enough to defend the Affordable Care Act. It's a broken system. You got to have the guts to stand up and allow us to do what every other major nation does. Guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Not allow the drug companies and the insurance companies to make massive profits every year. And Mr. President, I want to touch on an issue that gets virtually no discussion, but I think it is enormously important. And it says a hell of a lot about what's going on in our society today. In America, according to international studies, our life expectancy, how long we live as a people, is about 4 years lower than other countries. Most European countries people there live longer lives. Japan, they live even more longer lives than in Europe. So question number one, why is that happening? We spend $14,000 a year per person on health care, almost double what any other country spends, and yet people around the world are living, on average, 4 years longer than we do. But here is the really ugly fact, even worse than that. And that is that in this country, on average, if you are a working class person, you will live 7 years shorter lives than if you're in the top 1%. If you're a working class person, your life will be 7 years shorter than if you are wealthy. In other words, being poor or working class in America today amounts to a death sentence. Mr. President, it's not only a broken healthcare system. We have got to ask ourselves a simple question, and the Biden administration began a little bit of movement in this direction. And that is, why are we living in a nation where 1 out of 4 people can't even afford the prescription drugs their doctors prescribe? Why are we in some cases paying 10 times more than our neighbors in Canada or in Europe?
That is an excellent question. Why the same drug available for 1/10 of the price in other places? Why is that? It is the middlemen that have been allowed to soak us, and the government we elect that allows it to happen.
How does that happen? And the answer, of course, has to do with the greed of the pharmaceutical industry and their power right here, all of the campaign contributions that they make, which has prevented us from negotiating prices. But it's not just health care or prescription drugs when we look at what's going on in America. In Vermont and throughout this country, we have a major housing crisis. Here we are, the richest country on earth, 800,000 people sleeping out on the streets, and 20 million people are spending more than 50% of their limited incomes on housing. Can you imagine that? If you're a working person spending 50% of your income on housing, how do you have money to do anything else? And the cost of housing is soaring. Do not tell me, Mr. President, that in a nation which could spend $1 trillion on the military, a nation that gives massive tax breaks to the rich, that we cannot build the millions of units of housing that we desperately need. So, Mr. President, why is all of this happening? Why do we have a healthcare system that's broken, prescription drugs that are the most expensive in the world, a housing system, education in deep trouble? Talk to educators in Vermont, all over the country. Talked to a principal the other day from Vermont. Their starting salary at a public school, $32,000 a year. But don't worry, they can't afford to even bring people in because they can't afford the housing in the community. Why have we let education sink to the level that it has? So I think the bottom line of all this, the American people, I think, are catching on. And Mr. Musk, I must thank him because he has made it very clear. We are living in an oligarchic form of society. If anybody out there thinks that Mr. Musk is running around out of the goodness of his heart trying to make our government more efficient, you have not a clue as to what is going on. What these guys want to do is destroy virtually every federal program that impacts the well-being of working people, Social Security, Medicare, Postal Service, public education, you name it. So they can get huge tax breaks for the rich and eventually make government so inefficient that they will have the ability as large corporations to come in and privatize everything that is going on. So, Mr. President, this is a pivotal moment in American history. And I sense that the American people have had it up to here. They are prepared to fight back. They do not want a government run by billionaires who have it all, whose greed is uncontrollable. You know, we have in Vermont, and I think all over this country, serious problem with addiction, with drugs, people drinking too much alcohol, people smoking too many cigarettes. But the worst form of addiction that this country now faces is the greed of the oligarchy. You might think that if you had $10, $20 billion, it would be enough. You know, kind of enough to let your family live for the next 20 generations. But it's not. For whatever reason, whatever compulsive reason they have, these guys want more and more and more, and they are prepared to destroy Social Security, Medicare, nutrition programs for hungry people in order to get even more. That, to me, is disgusting. So, Mr. President, we are at a pivotal moment in American history. But having been all over this country, or many parts of this country, I am absolutely confident that the American people, and I'm not just talking about Democrats, who are as complicit in the problems that we have right now as are Republicans. Because we got a two-party system which is basically corrupt. You got Mr. Musk over on the Republican side saying to any Republican who dares to stand up and defy the Trump agenda, we are going to primary you. And on the Democratic side, you got AIPAC, and you got other super PACs saying, you stand up for working people, you're in trouble as well. We got a corrupt campaign finance system in which billionaires are able to buy elections.
And that is true at so many levels, but it's not even being done in the shadows anymore. And dark money to these super PACs. Elon Musk is literally giving away checks to people to vote for his candidate, right? I mean, he didn't succeed this last time with the Supreme Court. But you know, I mean, it's right out in the open now.
And that's why all over this country, people are not happy with our two-party system, the Republicans and the Democrats. So, Mr. President, this is a pivotal moment in American history. But we have had difficult moments before. And I am confident from the bottom of my heart that if we stand together and we do not allow some right-wing extremists to divide us up by the color of our skin or our religion or where we were born or our sexual orientation, if we stand together, we can save this country. We can defeat oligarchy. We can defeat the movement toward authoritarianism. And in fact, we can create an economy and a government that works for all, not just the few. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Hear, hear. And it does feel like people are finally starting to wake up. My grave concern is that it may not be, you know, that we end up a day late and a dollar short. But we can't give up the fight, folks. So what do you think? Are you a Bernie person like I am? I'm a big fan of Bernie Sanders. But I understand that not everybody else. Let me know what you think in the comments.